At the same time, the Rashi and the Radak says maybe it's talking about Mordechai, right? The concept that it says V'la Erev Yichalek Shalal, right? In the time of the Galut, right? If you look at the Radak, for example, Rashi says it also, but the Radak says it even more clear. V'chei Mordechai shekam al Haman v'al banav v'aytat shua gdola l'Yisrael ayado, right? So that's called at nighttime because Melchemet Mordechai's Erev lefi shegalu Yisrael me'aratzam, and that's Galut, which is Doma le'Erev. In Yichalek Shalal, as the pasuk says explicitly, Uvabizalo shalchu et yadam. The Chizkuni, for example, has a good question of why the difference of Ze'ev versus Aryeh Yehuda versus Malchut of Binyamin. Binyamin was a Ze'ev because his Shaul's Malchut didn't last, just like a Ze'ev praised but doesn't stay along with his, I don't know the English word, pray, right, of what he does pray, as opposed to Malchut Beit David, which is going to be forever. That's Aryeh, that doesn't boreach but is Omeid al Tirfo. Very nice diukim. The Onkelos, which is what we need, the Onkelos on this pasuk says, if you look at the Onkelos, he says, how do I understand Binyamin Ze'ev Yitraf Baboker Yochal Ad V'la'erev Yichalek Shalal? So he learns, he says, Binyamin Be'arei Tishrei Shechinta. In my land, the Shechina will dwell. Uve'achsante Yitpaneh Mikdasha. And in my machsan, if you will, in my property, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to build the Mikdash. And what's going to happen? What does it mean? Baboker, ba'erev, bitzafru, bipanya, morning and nighttime. Yehon mekarvin kohanim korbana. The kohanim are going to bring the karbanos. Li'idon ramsa, yehon mifalgin, mota chalkein mishar kucha. And the rest of the nighttime, what are they going to do? They're going to split up all the food that the kohanim ate. So we see, Targum Onkelos sees within here, this concept that what? That the Beit HaMikdash is already what? In the Chelek of Binyamin. And what bothered me is, so why? What's so special about Binyamin? So what didn't only bother me? The Gemara asked this in 3 or 4 different Gemaras. What's so special about Binyamin that they get the Mikdash? So the Gemara in Zvachim asked this question on Daf Nun Gimel Mebet, the next source in front of you on page 2. And the Gemara says that Amar Avli Bar Chamar Bar Chanina Ritzua Ita Yotza Michalko Yehuda. There was a small portion that went from Yehuda and came into the Chelek of Binyamin. And Binyamin at Tzaddik was Mitztaer Aleh B'chol Yom. He had a small part, and he said, "Why? I wanted that piece of the Beit HaMikdash." Chofeif Alav Kol Hayom in Dvarim. That's the end of the sources. Fikach, because he was mitztaer, that he didn't have the whole portion, and there was some portion in Yehuda. Fikach zacha Binyamin atzadik v'naseh ushpizachan lakadosh baruch hu uven ktefav shachem. So from this Gemara, it sounds like because he wants it all, but we'll see even more. If you look at, for example, the Gemara in Sota gives a different reason. Gemara in Sota, everyone knows I have a nephew who's named Nachshon. Right? Why is he named Nachshon? Because most people say, oh, who's the first one that jumped in? Nachshon ben Aminadav. But there's a different day on the Gemara that you might not know. I only knew it because I learned the Netziv way back when. But he quotes this Gemara in Sota. Sota, Daf Lamed Vav and Lamed Zayin. That says what? The Tanya, Haya Rabbi Meir Omer, the second to last source and the last source on page 2. And Lamed Vav and Mebed and Lamed Zayin and Aleph from Sechet Sota. Kisha'amdu Yisrael al Hayam, Hayushvati minatzchim zeh. What happened? According to one opinion, Kafat Shiftosha Binyamin v'yarad liyam tchila. Shenemar pasuk in Tehillim, Sham Binyamin Tzair Rodim, Antikrei Rodim Ela Red Yam. Right, and at that point, Sar Yehuda were rogmim otam. They were jealous. What were they doing? They're throwing rotten tomatoes at them. Right, the Yehuda were throwing stones at them. Right. Fikach zacha Binyamin atzadik v'naseh ushpuzichan ligvura. Shneimar uvein ktefav shachem. And then you have the dissenting opinion that we know. So far we've seen 2 Gemaras that have explained why did Binyamin get the Chelek. There's another Gemara in Megillah. Again, same type of idea that explains that he saw there's some sort of Ruach HaKodesh. Rashi in Masechet Megillah says he had Ruach HaKodesh, this is how it's going to be, and he was Mitztayer Allah, and that's the Chofeif Allah of Kol Hayom. He was Chofeif, Milashon Chafifa, he was like scratching his head. right? Wanting it so badly. So what's the message from these Gemarot? And to try to put it all together, one other piece, and then we're going to try to answer up these 6 or 7 questions all with one basic mahalach. The other question is basically on the other part of this week's parsha, which is, if you look at Perek Memchet on page 3, Vayomer Yaakov el Yosef El Shaddai Nirai Elei Luz Beretz Canaan Vayivarech Oti. Vayomer Elai Hinim Mafrecha V'Biticha V'Netaticha L'Kal Amim V'Natati Teretz Zot L'Zarcha Achrecha Achuzat Olam. Right? Famous idea of Ephraim Umnashe Kiruvon V'Shimon Yehuli Umoladcha Shalat Alehem Achreim L'Cha Yu Al Shem Achim Mikro Ben Achratam. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, Pasuk Zayin V'Ani B'Voim Mipadan Meita Alai Rachel Be'eretz Canaan Badarech Ba'od Kivrat Aretz Lafo Ephrata, which we saw in Lamed Hay already. Sham B'derech Ephrat Hi Beit Lachem. And this is what we call a non sequitur. What is this pasuk at all doing here? This, all the Mefarshim says, like, what is this doing here? We're talking about the bracha of Yosef, of Ephraim and Menashe. What is this going on here? Right? So this is, we know the Divrei Agadata of Rashi that we all quote of Kol B'Raman Nishma Rachel Mebakar Baneha. Right? The Rashbam, for example, talks about that I didn't have time to bury her in Marat HaMachpelah, right? And therefore that all the Mefarshim deal with this is all some sort of apology. Some sort of apology. The Ibn Ezra says, Shemita Pit'om, she died suddenly, V'lo Yacholti Loholicha Lekavra B'Me'ara, like Leah, meaning, almost according to Ibn Ezra, I really wanted to what? I really wanted to bury her in the Mara also, but I didn't have a chance, right? I couldn't do it, right? And why did he tell this to Yosef? That he shouldn't be upset. Now you're asking me. Yaakov's asking Yosef, make sure, swear to me that you're going to not let me here in Mitzrayim, get me to the Me'ara, but you didn't do this for my mother. Why should I do this for you? So, according to the Ibn Ezra, Meita Pitom, according to the Radak, again, the next source, Hamamar Zehu Li Natzel Yosef Mashalo Kiber Imo B'Mara Kamosh Kabar Leah, right? And he's saying too, no, I was in Pshia Ki Meita Baderech V'hu Haya Holech La'at L'Regel Amlacha V'lo Yachol Azov Amlacha U'Lenasal L'Beit Lechem V'Koshke L'Mara, right? I was in the middle of a work day. You know, I had a lot of work to do. I couldn't leave. I couldn't just Hatzon Babakar Alot Alai. And if I would have carried her by Regel, it would have been a Bizui Hameit, Haitam Misrachat. Maybe it was the summertime, the Radak says. They couldn't embalm her at that point because no doctors with her. Since she died b'meit, therefore the kavarta baderech, that's the Radak. The Ramban says another pshat here that he did. Again, everyone agreeing it's some sort of apology, right? And I actually did kavod for the meita, right? The meiti, because I didn't want to bury two sisters together for some reason because of the marriage. The Rabbeinu Bachai also gives a different reason. Meita pit'om ba'derech v'lo yachol alicha sham l'marta machpelah, because the Torah hayiladim and kavod hamikneh. How am I going to put down my children over there ba'derech and leave them alone? There's no babysitter there. V'ilo yomolachim ima lo yamigim sham. It would have taken days if I would have taken them. So each one, there's another pshat Chazal has that meita alai is milashon neder, Vayida Yaakov neder. And the idea is, Chazal say in Vayikra Rabbah, I quoted you both from the Meshech Chachma, that Allah is because of me she died, right? Kol mi shenoderu ma'ashen nidro. The Torah T'mima somehow explains that also, that there was some sort of neder. How the Torah T'mima explains it is that the extra 18 months that he stayed in Sukkot, he should have fulfilled the neder, and therefore the actual, it's not a non sequitur. I'm promising, don't make the same exact mistake as I did, right? I messed up by being Mashem, my neder. So you're going to be taking a Shavua. Yishav Ali, make sure not to mess up also. But the bottom line is, before I take a question, all of the Mefarshim here are trying to figure out, number one is the contextual, what's going on. We already learned this in Bamidbar Lamed Hey, so it's an apology. But even there, on all of these Mefarshim, for example, the Ibn Ezra says, really she should be in the Me'ara. But Meita Alai Pitom. That's one mahalach, and it could be b'kavana, let's say like Rashi also, of kol b'raman nishma. Or is it, the last question, then we're going to try to put it all together, but before I put it all together, I'll answer a question, is it by chance that it's baderech? Or, and many of us are thinking, it's not just by chance, it's kol b'raman nishma. Or is it there's actually a different message maybe than what we've heard from Rashi of Kol Barama Mishma, maybe a different message that it's Baderech. Yeah.
I'm just curious, there's nowhere in the Torah would suggest otherwise, but is it possible this is the first time that Yaakov is telling Yosef about where she's buried and why and everything? I mean, he was alive for 17 years, probably was thinking maybe he wanted to know where his mother was, maybe Yaakov told him.
The question is why at this point?
Why at this point? It could be that it could just be that like there's some of the children fit better than others. This is like directly related to the fact he said, "Don't bury me." I want you to bury me there, and so I mean.
The question is right. I guess you have to I guess you have to look at the psukim also before whether if he. I mean, till now it's been talking about Ha'od Avicha. It's talking about a lot of the father. Right.
No, you assume that if you're 17, probably at some point knew that his mother was dead.
Right. Okay. So just as a review to try to answer up now these 7 questions, basically, hopefully with one approach that, and as a good Jew, I'll try to, ask another question just to make it around 8. We just finished Hanukkah, what the heck, right? But the basic questions, even if I don't remember all the questions, is what's to really understand the depth, the 2 Gemaras that talked about why does, and based on the Targum Onkelos also, why does the Binyamin get the Beit HaMikdash in his Chelek? Number 2, the special emphasis, and I'm doing this out of order, maybe I should do it in order, but the concept of the difficulty in the pregnancy, what's that all about? What's it all about? The Binyamin and Ben-Oni, is it really contradictory? What was the Al-Tiriv by the Me'aledet, that you're going to have a bain? What does that really mean that you're going to have a bain? What is this Kimeita Alai Rachel? Is it just by chance that it's Baderech, or maybe it's not? There's actually a different message to it. So let's try to answer up some of. I'd like to give a basic approach, and hopefully, if I didn't remember the other questions, try to answer it up. I think the message that you see through everything about Binyamin, it's not by chance that his birth is through the Koshi Aleida, it's not 2 opposite approaches that it comes to Binyamin. Many of us, like we know it's Binyamin. Many of us, we think about, when am I going to be that tzaddik, that superstar at the end? When am I going to be the head of this, my own company? Whatever our dreams are, we're always thinking about, I want to be on top already. I'm stuck in college already. Just give me the piece of paper. Give me the master's already. And I will change the world already. And many of us don't appreciate the process. And I think Binyamin is the epitome of understanding the difficulty of the process, of what we would call the derech. I believe in every piece that we saw, that's what's going on here. That Binyamin, already from its pregnancy, what do we see? We see the heavy emphasis of what? Of the difficulty of the labor, of the problem, where she's saying Ben-Oni, and that is something that's intrinsic. Don't think, it's not that he's saying, oh, Binyamin, right, to contradict what she's saying. It's not contradicting, it's exactly what the Ramban said. The Ramban said it's tirgein l'tova. What is tirgein l'tova? It's understanding that to get to Binyamin, to get to that person who's going to be la'orech shanim, somebody strong, what is essential for that process is to be a Ben-Oni, is to understand the struggle, is to understand that derech. And what the Mi'aledet is saying, right? What the Mi'aledet is saying is al tiri ki gam zelach bein, right? So what does that mean? It means that right now it's what? It's difficult. Right now it's very difficult. It's that emphasis. But what? Ki gam zelach bein. I told you that that's what both the Sforno, but the